Saturday, the San Antonio Spurs were back in action on the second night of a back-to-back. After a very short turnaround, the Spurs were without three of their best players, Keldon Johnson, Devin Vassell, and Jakob Poeltl, all on the injured list. They were 50.5 underdogs. The Boston Celtics had all of their players, and the Celtics led by 15 points in this game. And yet, when the night was over, the San Antonio Spurs, huge underdogs in this game, forced the Celtics into crunch time, where the Celtics barely escaped San Antonio with a 5-point win. What's up, everyone? This is Paul Garcia with Project Spurs. Let's go ahead and jump into this very exciting game. We didn't anticipate this to be an exciting game for the Spurs and Celtics because San Antonio really battled very well for the players that they had out there on the floor. Okay, so now as we look here at the game breakdown, by each 6-minute segment, we do see that initially the Celtics and Spurs were very close, and then Boston kind of got a little bit of a comfortable lead at the midway point of the second quarter, and then by halftime they were by 11. Then in the second half, the Spurs battle back, get the Celtics within 4 there at the end of the third quarter. In the fourth, the Celtics look like they're about to walk away with a comfortable win. They're up by 11 midway, 6 minutes left in the game. And no, the Spurs forced them to go all the way down the stretch into crunch time, and San Antonio barely ends up losing there by 5 points. It was a really a crucial game for San Antonio, the way that they really battled back. Actually, former Spur Derrick White made some key plays for Boston to help them hold on to that win. Meanwhile, former Celtics, who I'll talk about in a little bit, Josh Richardson and Romeo Langford had really good nights against their former team, and they really helped San Antonio stay afloat and stay within pace of the Celtics. So that's kind of a quick summary of the game. And now let's dive into some more analysis here for the Spurs and Celtics. Okay, so now as we see here, let's first look at some of the leading scorers for both teams. Zach Collins, again, had a really good scoring night, this time starting at the center spot with Jakob Poeltl out. He ends up with 18 points, 14 points in the paint for Zach, and the paint was a theme for San Antonio on offense tonight. Tre Jones had another good night with 18 points, also aggressive attacking the Celtics interior defense with 10 points in the paint. Like I mentioned, Josh Richardson, dealing a lot of points against his old team with 12 points from the three-point line. He had a good shooting night. And then Romeo Langford started with Devin Vassell out. He ends up with 14 points, also aggressive. Romeo was attacking the paint, ends up with 12 points in the paint against his old team. Doug McDermott was impactful as well with 13 points off the bench, 6 points from the three-point line. Rookie Jeremy Sohan with 11 points, 6 in the paint. Stanley Johnson off the bench with 10 points. And one thing I do want to note about Stanley is because he played in this game and he's still on the Spurs, his contract actually guaranteed. His contract was non-guaranteed up until today. And by 5 p.m. Eastern time, if he was still on the Spurs roster, his contract would guarantee. So, of course, that time passed by. And so Stanley is now on the team with a guaranteed contract at I believe, $1.2 million. And then Malachi Branham, the rookie, also with a good name, with 10 points, 8 points in the paint for Malachi against the Celtics team. And then the one area where the Spurs really were able to stay with Boston and really have the reason why they could stay with Boston is because they had such a huge paint advantage. The Spurs scored 70 paint points. The Celtics only scored 54, so they outscored them by 16 points from there. Now let's go look at the Celtics. Jayson Tatum, he had 34 points on the night. Jaylen Brown, 29 points for the Celtics. And then Malcolm Brogdon with 23. And then Robert Williams off the bench there with 10 points. And then former Spur Derrick White with 8 points. And like I said, Derrick made some key plays for the Celtics down the stretch. When we look at the shot analysis for the Spurs, Boston's a good team. They're one of the best teams in the league. And so the Spurs did have a tough time, finishing in the paint against Boston, shooting from three. But they did have a good night from the mid-range. They actually made 78% of their mid-range shots, which ties their season high for San Antonio. As far as the Spurs on the other end, they had a good night as far as holding the Celtics from attacking the paint very well. The Celtics were not efficient. They only made 56% of their paint shots, which is a low number. They did have a good night from the three. They made 44% of their threes. They didn't have an efficient night from the mid-range either. And then also from the free throw line, they struggled there, 12 of 18 free throws for the Celtics. As far as transition, the Celtics won that battle by 7 points. The Spurs really couldn't get out on the break, against the Celtics defense. And then the Spurs really made the Celtics pay for whenever they turned the ball over. The Spurs scored 19 points off those Celtics turnovers. Just some other notes from offense for the Spurs. Those 70 paint points are now their second most on the season. So they really just kept attacking the Celtics defense, even without Keldon Johnson, without Devin Vassell, without Jakob Poeltl. Like I mentioned earlier, that 78% mid-range accuracy was a season high, ties it. They did a great job, San Antonio, considering all these players that were out, that they did a great job of taking care of the basketball. Just 13 turnovers for the team. And then 66% of their shots were in the paint, which is the second most amount of shots from a percentage perspective that they shot this season. Unfortunately for the Spurs, since they couldn't make that comeback, they are now 0-25 when trailing by double digits. So that's been a theme all season long, is when they fall behind by 10 or more, they just can't make the full comeback. and ended up winning the game. So they're now 0-25 when that happens. Like I said, they had a good night holding the Celtics to just 56% paint accuracy. They also, considering they were missing some key players, they also didn't put Boston on the free throw line too much. The Celtics only made 12 free throws out of those 18 attempts. And then, like I mentioned, the Spurs got 1.36 points per Celtics turnover, which is higher than the Spurs' season average in that stat. All right, so now who are your standout players? Normally I go through 3 standout players for the Spurs, but this one I do want to give an honorable mention to Romeo Langford, even though statistically he didn't pop off as like one of the top 3 players, but I do want to mention him for a reason, and I'll get to him in a bit. So Zach Collins, like I mentioned, starting at the center spot, what do we have here? 18 points on 13 shot attempts, an efficient shooting night, 12 rebounds, 5 assists, 1 foul, and then two turnovers for Zach with Jakob Poeltl out due to injury. Josh Richardson comes off the bench with 34 minutes, 14. Actually, that should be 18 points on 14 shots. My apologies, Josh Richardson. So Josh is efficient shooting the ball. So 18 points on 14 shots, 3 rebounds, 4 assists, 1 steal, and 3 turnovers. Also 2 blocks for Josh Richardson. He had one where he really threw Sam Hauser's mess out of there on a layup attempt. Tre Jones, the starting point guard, with 30 minutes he plays. It ends up scoring 18 points on 18 shots, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 fouls, and 1 steal, and also 1 turnover for Tre. And then the reason why I say Romeo Langford is because, I'll go through a stat line first. 31 minutes, 14 points starting on 15 shot attempts, 7 rebounds for him, 1 assist, 3 fouls, and no turnovers. It's a good thing. It's because he was really key in the fourth quarter when the Spurs made that comeback and they really took the Celtics down to the wire. I mean, Romeo was just going against his old teammates. I mean, there was like a play where he takes Jayson Tatum into the paint, kind of like Tatum tries to block him, and he still gets the layup off against him. He had a crucial mid-range shot. And finally, now that that this week has come to a close, let's look at the Spurs' schedule for next week. It's going to be very similar to this past week, where there's going to be 4 games in 7 nights. So get ready again. A lot of Spurs basketball coming up this coming week. So Monday, they're on the road at Memphis, who are 25-13. They're the second best team out west as of Saturday evening that I'm recording this video. Then on Wednesday, they get another game against the Grizzlies. I'm also on the road, so they'll just probably stay in Memphis. Then on Friday is that big game that they've been talking about that's been advertised as the game in the Alamo Dome, where I believe they're only like 5,000 tickets short of reaching that record that they're trying to get to. And the Warriors are 6th out west right now. There was reports that Stephen Curry might be back for that game, so that'll be even more exciting of a game. And then Sunday, the Spurs will be back home at the AT&T Center, where they will play the Sacramento Kings, who are 5th out west. Again, 2023, where the Kings have a better record than the Warriors now. I know Curry's been hurt, but yeah, the Kings are having a good season. So for Project Spurs, I am Paul Garcia. Have a great evening.